I, Richard Anthony Dunn, Jr., R.J. Introduction. By my blood which is my lineage, by my will which is my wish, by my word which is my command, by my hand which is my demand, by my arm which is my requirement under contract as myself through my higher self with the Son as agent to the good side of source to the people from the beginning, as was and forever must be, for which, by the will and word of source, the great arranger of all things for my and all others' responsibility and best outcomes with survival and abundance for the innocent, what follows must be. I am grateful to have been allowed this honor as well as the titles, the perfect man and cosmic sleuth, keeper and guardian of the white cube and the sacred knowledge therein. Accordingly, I have, in times past, accepted ownership and responsibility which gives authority, which gives jurisdiction, which gives dominion, and therefore must be with the guidance of Source, Son and my higher self by the grace of Source to my lineage. No one has the right to take this under fraud or theft under penalty of death. Why I was given the case. Sometimes when you're high enough and your underlings are too afraid and will not do the job, you man up. I take the tough cases that no one wants. When a civilization goes too far. Was the artificer, the 13th judge, the swing vote. I decide when the vote is 6-6, when there is no decision and civilizations are dying by being harvested for economic gain and malice. I also make recommendations for the means of punishment including weapons of war and implement as necessary. I am the artificer. If you met me, you probably had a very bad day. You and or your people might not have survived it. Having said that, I was sent in because nobody wanted it and I am known as the hanging judge, the only one that would take the case. I'm one of the original programmers. I do corrective actions. Patton said the same thing of the battlefield and there have been others, it is only a matter of scale. In some ways my job is easier than those who come after me. Simply, the lines between good and evil on the surface are so extreme here, as to be more easily drawn. The question comes however, with duress under satanic governmental control and first cause, when does responsibility begin? This is not an easy thing. Forward, general litigation. What follows has been written as a public expository synopsis of the dire circumstances requiring the prior judgment as dictated by the below referenced casebook and execution under said authority which will now take place. This is just a small taste of the casebook. It is a lot worse or better pending your standing. Any discrepancy between this document and the casebook must of necessity be decided based on the control document which is the casebook of the original document. However, as the author, I must state, if I made an error in judgment against the victimized party, it must be safely assumed based on logic as defined in said casebook to favor said victimized party. Reference, Casebook, Demand for Title and Adjudication of Planet Earth. The Way Out to Save Planet Earth with Addendum 1, incorporated herein by reference. Said book of 180 pages is a living document with 5 addenda to be following to date. This work will most likely be placed in the 6th or 7th addendum, each addendum being 18 pages, generally including a table of contents. A watermark appears on each page, except one, as of this writing. It is my sigil, my seal, the validated squaring of the circle by ancient rules, compass and straightedge with alphabetized point-by-point mathematical proof, considered by some secret societies to be the divinely inspired sacred math of Source speaking directly to men and all other creatures. That is why it is here. Source required the deal not be for one provincial world, Earth, rather for all impacted worlds. I speak for worlds of the dead beyond number, genocide after genocide. All are fed up with the Milky Way cannibal galaxy. This is to be a route for those who oppose this justice. Said justice is based on pages 70 to 71 as extracted from said casebook as follows. 6. Make claim, general, on an off-world. The nobles, their minions and superiors engaged in the following illegal activities. Weaponization as, direct, indirect, covert and/or overt mind control, drugging, electromagnetics, diminishing capacity, intimidation, coercion, fraud, kidnapping, slavery, torture, murder, disinformation, contracts of adhesion, withholding truth, false witness, limiting historical perspective, infiltration, sabotage, gameplay, false flag, corruption, nepotistic and other contrived incompetence, malfeasance, misfeasance, nonfeasance by the judicial, legislative and executive, resource manipulation, genetic, food, health, energy, financial, mining, manufacturing, transportation, distribution. Contrived and or connived population control, war, disease, pestilence, famine, death cult, cannibalism, human sacrifice, forced conversion, false prophecy, manipulation equals planning, denial of free will and the right to become and/or any genetic recombinations thereof for both man, animals and/or plants based on intellect and/or origin on this world as an original species or with other worlds. To include non-human cognizant and malignant warring species without verifiable just cause to be weighed in terms of valid cross-claims. This obviates all Muslim-derived expeditionary forces and related psyops including derivative religions, and associated groups of the Sirius Star Group, Dog, and others, etc. Impeding free speech. Right to bear arms. Right to defend property. Right to assembly. Illegal taxation of land, home, transport, travel, and impediments to same such as oil or other energy source which is forced upon the population as a subjugated people. It is understood that all such travesties upon the subjugated souls are without permission or consent, but rather through fraud and become the basis of tax grievances, against the authorities of the galaxies, systems and worlds, their agents, associates and minions for which the forementioned casebook is the controlling document for complaint under my authority as derived as described under contract going back to the beginning of this world. Separately, for alleged and or convicted miscreants by individual, immediate family and lineage, for which all records must be maintained by code which must be turned over. Failing which a guilty plea will be entered, until the deficit is cured. Absentia judgments are allowed, which may be reversed upon surrender and case being made. Failing which a time may be allowed to prepare a case. Appeal is allowed based on new evidence. All consequences have been levied against you and your superiors, home worlds, investors, suppliers, minions, agent provocateurs, spies and all manner of associates, all those listed in the casebook or as included otherwise, including the usual suspects. I placed an emphasis on forcing you into positions where you would have to kill your own people on outlying worlds or let them starve to protect home worlds. Further, I focused on sheer unmitigated and unrelenting agony for you and your peoples. I believe you will find I am vastly understating your situation. To this end, I have invoked the interlocking treaties going back to the beginning of this planet across this universe. This means a universe of weaponry at my disposal with the ability to reach out and touch with no recourse or traceability. Kind of a something for every purpose under heaven. Or a key for every lock. I instituted continuous inventory and analysis done for integration as more arrive. You, as representative of the Milky Way predator cannibal galaxy really are that popular based on your history. You know your victims intergalactically, as the butcher knows the cow. Accordingly, it was not difficult to get agreement contractually once I realized it had to be for all that had suffered losses or otherwise been compromised. In the pursuit of this endeavor, my goal as always is zero losses for the just, my name for my treaty troops, the former, the title I gave them as something to live up to. By your reasonably prudent man standard of law, your environmental meddling has given me cancer and is designed to wipe out this world or the majority of the original life thereon, as has been done serially in reruns of your dystopian morality play on all too many worlds. Therefore, I am well within my rights to demand or otherwise prosecute the death of anybody involved as a matter of personal self-defense and worldwide hegemony. It is never wise to poison the judge or higher. It limits your possibilities. To make sure it is understood, said casebook, as incorporated herein by reference, classifies entities as actors by their relationships with disposition by legal merit, up to and including the death penalty to include the enemy's allies, agents, spies, agent provocateurs and profiteers and or investors, vendors, associates and minions sharing in booty. Reference said casebook for details. After demand, in the Milky Way Noble Court the accused pled guilty under my adjudication which included a judicial quitclaim deed, because they never had authority. Specifically, as this and other planets and solar systems collided with the Milky Way having in general crossed the void, the Milky Way never had authority. Said courts comprised the judges and lawyers of the Milky Way cannibal galaxy and their support staff for the common and noble courts. They had allowed the culling of countless stars, worlds and their populations over as much as 11 billion years for fun and profit. However, Murderous behavior continued, requiring military intervention. I ordered the troops in, 100 B souls died, 5 survived, 50 M treaty troops were lost. The enemy claimed it was a last calling for biological material for life extension. I had the noble and common courts of the Milky Way cannibal galaxy and their halls of records with communications taken out. That is common and noble courts of the Milky Way under the Chinese astronomy system. As forementioned, the hanging judge, the 13th judge, I took no pleasure in this. By behavior, you asked for me. Again, I get the hard cases that no one wants. When underlings, out of fear, will not do the job, the master comes to do what must be done. An, Inu, Enki, Aya, Anubis, et al. That is where we stand. Get your affairs in order. Because of what I'd done here, destroying the judges and lawyers of the Milky Way cannibal galaxy, it was some time before I realized that the next step up in the universal court system was Source, my name and others' name for what you might call God. As a condition of coming here, to this world, your prior life memories are taken under contract. Therefore everything had to be figured out. I am also a fair detective. August 2017, I realized. The universal court system is 3 tiers, 1. Solar system, 2. Galaxy and 3. Source, what you might call God. Problems arise in physical collisions between 1 and 2 or 2 and 2 with jurisdictional disputes, as has happened to here. The peoples of the universe are tired of dying galaxies destroying vibrant civilizations to extend their lives beyond their time. Culling, under color of fraud, is never ethical. Source, when asked in the capacity as the highest court for a determination as a request, gave an emphatic no. To wit, I made demand under contract, thereby a resounding, yes, was delivered. I wondered if it was a machine and so inquired, being told no. Not what I expected at all. Remember, memory wipe. All above referenced materials have been placed on the stairway to heaven under seal, under contract as adjudicated in its entirety and accepted as such by Source. This document will also be so placed by the time you read it. Interesting, Zechariah Sitchin is born in the Muslim state of Azerbaijan and grows up in Palestine and pretends to be a Jew. I believe Jews and Muslims are the same people as to origins and operations as a murderous human sacrifice fertility cult which believes, as did the Japanese, that suicide, war and murder are acceptable for prosperity if it brings them to power by killing more of the enemy, that is the white and other races, under subterfuge, to perfect the theft of our planet and the lie that they come from here, as was demonstrated before said courts. Consider. Abraham founds Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. His parents are of the priesthood of Ur, Mesopotamia. Some would call this Babylon. Does anyone check this stuff? Apparently, these minor details are left out. Alexander the Great's mother was Sumerian, same crew. Muhammad has both parents of the priesthood, same crew. Barbara Bush and Dubai fund the Arch of Baal, the storm god, placement in Trafalgar Square, London, England, and Times Square, New York, USA. Why? Because it is a historic icon of Islam, and the replica's placement, and how interesting that this is the land of the Philistine, which includes its capital, Palestine, and Gaza, Israel, Syria, Jerusalem. Wikipedia, et al. There were also a couple of other countries. I want you to look it up. If it is gone, I demand that Source under contract destroy those who delete any history going forth and cast them into the great void. The Weather Control and the Chinese Three Gorges Dam are raising the Babylonian storm god, Baal. Read the case book for proof. History and the Lost Book of Enki. It is often said by Zechariah Sitchin, Muslim, turned Jew, and others, the term Anunnaki means those from heaven to earth come. This is standard throughout the literature. I state that this has been done for nefarious purposes, to allow claims of ownership without merit. In Sumerian, Anunnaki is made up of 3 words. To keep it simple, the first word, Enu, is the king's name, the second, N means comes to, and the third, Ki means earth. In its totality this means the named, king, comes to earth, the Sab is invading. Thank you Sitchin for covering this up. You piece of Muslim, he claims Jew, excrement. It is the Muslim Babylonian and Hebrew culture. I demand Source send Sitchin to the pit under contract. Repeat. This was an off-world invasion. The best part is they're doing the same thing they do historically, they're trying to get rid of the original people here and destroying the planet in the process, hoping to return it to some semblance of order so they can survive, but they keep acting as children and blame everyone except for themselves for their bad behavior. But why? On Nibiru, they had a nuclear war that brought them to the brink of extinction per the Sumerian texts. Turns out gold is one primitive way to get rid of radioactive uranium and generate heat in the dark empty void of space. Guerrilla engineering, purely ungodlike and retarded. Nibiru was a dying world which was losing its atmosphere periodically as it was continuously bleeding off into space. These idiots were detonating nuclear devices against volcanoes to create volcanism to generate gases to periodically reform their atmosphere. This mismanagement exasperated by nuclear war triggered all sorts of associated environmental problems, as in current time self-inflicted and intentional, including a cycle of nuclear warfare as they did in the Saudi Peninsula, some say around 24,000 years ago, Oppenheimer. Interesting to note, all the Muslim countries have claims on said peninsula and there are beautiful round black rings around devastated cities with thermonuclear green glass in the region. The rings are visible from space and were talked about years ago when I was a lot younger. In any event, the real value of gold is that it is the nuclear trigger for uranium, constricting energy to that required for fusion. I am not giving you research on that. These idiots were using this method to clean up the nuclear waste they generated. This warmed and or defrosted their planets. What would otherwise remain in ice ages much longer in the void between galaxies with a basically dead black sun these idiots worship. Simply, they then got rid of the nuclear debris by sprinkling the gold dust around, which transmuted the radioactive uranium and heated the world by this thermalization. This is why there is a thin layer of gold in the crust around our world and the last ice age ended after they created the last nuclear war. Again, this is the guerrilla engineering of idiots. So, whoever has the most gold gets the largest defrosted area before anyone else, hence why China has arranged all our debt by owning our politicians. But they do not come from this world? Because they believe they can do it again and they do not come from here, they are not attached to our planet Earth. Reference the ancient Sanskrit text kept alive after the invasion of the Mahabharata in the fashion of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 as a dystopian civilization based in reality. Hence, they have in prior times killed Venus and Mars. The last is covered in a thin sheath of plutonium, uranium and radioactive potassium with the two areas sitting opposite each other on both sides of the planet, disposed approximately 180 degrees one to the other. These screwballs have placed themselves in position to rule Earth and they tell us we are responsible for their misbehavior. Lies, lies, lies and more lies. In the Book of Enki, the first set of tablets, An, the king's name, means celestial one, is made king by lot Dunn fairly, his bride coming from the opposition. When the last, seventh male of his dynasty does not produce another male child, a concubine's child comes forward. Controversy arises when an unrecorded heir from the An's original sister's line comes forward as well. To avoid conflict, it is decided and agreed that the concubine's son will be king and the opposing seed must be cupbearer. After 9 Nibiru years, 1 Nibiru year equals 3,600 of our years, so this is 32,400 of our years, of incompetence, famine and mismanagement of the planet and atmosphere. Controversy arises again leading to mortal combat. The concubine's son is defeated, and the new king is named Anu. The concubine's son grabs a nuclear-armed spacecraft and makes tracks to the golden necklace which surrounds our sun and 5 inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars and Jupiter. He, like all before him, cannot get in. So, he fires multiple nuclear salvos at the golden necklace that Nibiru wants to dismember to get the gold to save their planet's atmosphere. He finally breaks through. This the basis of the leadership of the world today: Saudi Arabia, Mongolia, China, Kazakhstan, England, Rome, Islam and others. The question to be asked is what just happened? The answer is we are looking at the variant of a Dyson sphere. A Dyson sphere is a spherical device encapsulating a star and possibly the planets thereof for the purpose of harvesting all or some of the energy of said star. From this we know a Dyson necklace is the same idea, limited to the paths of the major bodies of a solar system and their moons with anything else the designer considers necessary or desirable. This would mean that our planet was fabulously wealthy. This is not the low-rent district. Further, our unwelcome guests from Nibiru had not taken just what they needed, avarice took control of them. They proceeded to unlawfully destroy the world so enclosed in their defensive systems against astrophysical events, setting those peoples up for such events as we see in current time as acts of genocide for which they are legally culpable. For this reason, they are responsible for all damages and must forfeit all worlds and proceeds of all investments made with ill-gotten gains from this and all other worlds so processed. An, Inu, and Enki, you and your minions and associates lose everything. My authority basis. My name is Richard Anthony Dunn Jr. My name in order means ruler, priceless, judge and son of, respectively. To purpose, my last name is Key, the true meaning and the to which I am bred is, judge, the 13th judge for some purposes and the one ring, the judge, to rule them all. Of the other 8 high kings of Ireland which these clowns destroyed. No one ever thought that anyone could break in. It was considered impregnable, that is before the concubine son's desperate act. It seems my people in ancient times were called the Tuatha, translated as the tribe, nation of the gods, or Tuatha, translated as the tribe, nation of the gods, or tribe, nation of the goddess Danu, purportedly descended of Nuada. So say the Irish, to appear to equate the Dunn with the goddess Danu as mother of the Irish, for which the Danube is named as mother of rivers. There is some mention that they arrived at what became Tara in spaceships. Tara became the seat of the High Kings of Ireland. It is now located in Leinster Province, County Meath. The name Dunn in Dunn appears first in the county of the High Kings of Ireland. From the above, this makes sense. Separately, this idea of mother of a nation appears as well in the Scottish meaning sons of the Irish, for which the Egyptian princess Goda was the mother of that nation, and becomes queen of the Irish. This happened after the Egyptian Hyksos invasion 44,000 years ago by blacks who went on to found Jerusalem. It is said that the Tuatha came bearing superior knowledge and were welcomed as gods, which from the Teutonic, Old German, means big man. If you look up their renowned technological artifacts of legend, the former statement would indicate technologies beyond the common folk, from weaponry to feeding people. However, it is not the point of this paper. When you run an interstellar or intergalactic civilization, there must be standardization of terms, particularly central to government, as in the leadership of a monarchy. In this form of governance, it is understood that the monarch is the ultimate judge. The Sumerian word Danu translates as to judge. This word would be central to the operation of any government. As such, it would not change in 450,000 years. Particularly, as a control feature of such a civilization, with men of extended lives as so reported. Interestingly, under the model of the judge of a solar system shared by Nibiru, Nibiru would have been a low-life planet, fundamentally populated by blacks. As the Sumerians were originally all black, as were the Jews of Ethiopia, despised by the Khazarian Jews of Israel, but so recognized as the original Jews, as the Khazarian white Jews were forced into Judaism by a czar trying to correct their brutally evil ways. Based on their behavior to date, they were probably subject to judgments against them by the judges, if they resided in the area of the judge's solar system. Probably not a friendly relationship. Strangely, the goddess Danu does not appear in the Mesopotamian pantheon of gods in Sumerian literature, with the exception of the above to judge reference. Nibiru did not come from this solar system. Strangely, the goddess Danu does appear in the Celtic, Irish, Indian, Hindu pantheon of gods in Gaelic/Sanskrit. Specifically, the name Danu appears as the mother of the Irish people and separately in the Hindu Rig Veda, the original Hindu scripture. Many other Irish, Celtic gods appear in said Rig Veda as well. As the technology of ancient India was superior, it is now believed that Egypt was a derivative civilization of India, India being older. Royals worldwide do not seek legitimacy connecting by familial ties to the Mesopotamian gods. Royals worldwide do seek legitimacy connecting familial ties to the Tuatha De Danann, tribe, nation of the goddess Danu, my lineage, Irish, not Germanic, like current royals. It would appear, the Sumerian, Babylonian contingent are trying to inject their name into the ruling royalty of the planet. From Danann comes the names Aduin and Adoin, written as Adun and Adun respectively, where the Amin son of which was eventually dropped, giving Dunn and Dunn. My family obviously bears the name, Dunn. The name also has the connotation for the color brown, which some people suggest means the hair color. I myself do have brown hair, which is related to red hair. This is interesting, as I once read that such people can produce vitamin D without sunlight. Blacks and others cannot, so technically they cannot survive an ice age without serious technological help. However, it also makes sense as to the color of a hill or the color of an Anunnaki or Sumerian trying to insert their lineage into the political ambience of the period. How strange that I should find that the coat of arms of the Knowles family at 150 AD is 3 copies of the crescent and star in red across a shield in proper order. Obviously not Islam, but rather their philosophical forebears. Possibly similar to the Barbara Bush and Dubé coincidentally funding the copies of the Arch of Baal replicas that were placed at Trafalgar Square, London, England and Times Square, New York as cultural icons of Islam. I do love it when I see things come together. Remember this when I speak of the manner of destruction of the coastlines of the world in the case book. Noel Kali is the killer of men bedazzling in a necklace of men's skulls. In kind, a laser image of what I always thought was a Hindu deity, Kali, sect of the thugs showing up on the Empire State Building by laser projection with a star and sickle on her forehead in reverse order, obviously denoting the female principle of Islam. Denoting a major slaughter for the city? Again, I believe I know the mechanism, some of which is in the case book. Moving along. The word Dunn in Gaelic meant hill. The original Dunn battle cry was the hill forever, as seen on the coat of arms. The name Dunn in Gaelic also means judge. The position of the Dunns at Tara was the sunny south side of the Hill of the 9 Hostages. This is the best sign for warmth and why some people build accordingly in colder climates. There were 8 kings and 1 ring to rule them all, the judge, a judge of kings and nobles. A true king is always a judge, as he must be by duty. Hill, Gaelic, Dunn, the wall around the house of a man who would be an Irish king, 12 feet at the base, 7 feet at the top. When his people agree, a rampart is constructed around the inside of that wall by his people and captives, thus making him king. Interesting. This is the wall that makes and protects the king. The top of the Dunn coat of arms also has an oak tree, the symbol of the Druids, placed below or behind a salamander. The Druids were the learned class from which the Brehon lawyers and judges were trained and practiced Irish, Celtic law. How interesting that the Druids practiced human sacrifice everywhere on the continent and England, except where they had fled or were not conquered. Such as around Tara, seat of the High Kings of Ireland, the Druids there did not practice human sacrifice. The Saracens, forebears of the Saxons, did. The name of the soccer team of London going back to the 1880s. The Saracens. In the last few centuries the off-world black nobility of Enki's kings employed Swiss mercenaries called Switzers. Said Switzers acted as assassins of the old kings, installers of new kings and enforcers against the citizenry, under the likes of backroom Sumerian gods and Inu, Enki, etc., sometimes with many names and religions of many peoples. Many claim these gods still exist, recipients of life extension drugs, based on culling babies. The U.S. ships to China. Ref. Herein, casebook and addenda. As these entities are geneticists, the male heir always bears the name as he has no definitive mark such as the female mitochondrial DNA, the battery of the human body. So, lacking proper technology, it must be by name and by deed, behavior, making identification reasonable of the oldest living male seed by Enki and the other actors, enabling the tracing for the purpose of murder as described in the case book, killing the original kings using said mercenary Switzers and their principles. In contrarian fashion, this way the weaker female was protected. The following list is non-exclusive and must include the gods and militaries of Australia, China. Their cohorts are now more public, calling themselves the peoples of the dragon, Greece, Mesopotamia, Babylon, Sumeria, Mongolia, Phoenicia, Tibet, and all other gods and entities malevolent to the original 5 planets and not native at the time of the original covenants and contracts signed by the original peoples going back to the beginning of this world and the other 4 worlds respectively, as stemming from that authority by ancient rule of contracts which must be without malevolent intent, including fraud or other malice. With full and timely continuous disclosure of any changes and renewals in context going back to the beginning of said contract and informed consent and ongoing informed consent to all terms and modifications in context of the parties' agreement going back to the beginning per the original agreements as legally modified without outside influence. This also means a contract must not reinstate itself and is not be valid outside of the original jurisdiction without notice. There must also be an amenable clause for cancellation by the lesser party due to their rejection of new terms with substantial public, Non-fictional, explicit notice on both sides, particularly for culling, the last must be under legitimate authority as recognized from the good side of source. This is true for all worlds falling under these documents. The problem is that the system is not self-correcting. Problems arise because fraud is allowed until someone with systemic authority and understanding challenges wrongdoing, as I have done here. I cut a deal through the interlocking treaties making this possible across all solar systems and planets so affected. It was the only way I could get agreement to proceed. No one ever did this on this scale before. Ergo, this must include the equivalent entities of all other worlds which fall under this or the original case book as incorporated herein by reference to include the interlocking treaties and the requisite rights of protection for all parties as dictated therein. Be it known, Anunnaki, apparently were black and are not the real royalty and not the original people of the earth. October 2010, the date was changed in the literature to 2012. Off-worlders agreed to grant my order to defuse the coronal mass ejection which threatened the earth based on my descent by blood. A friend whose father had been Jewish and mother who was Irish tried and it did not happen, but I could do it. So, it had to be by the non-Anunnaki side, assuming original blood. See below for more information. However, I was also granted the white cube. Shamanic secret societies, occultists of every order that I've spoken to so far, some not liking it one bit, agree. The original blood was white and or possibly original Indians of the Americas or that could not have happened. As I researched this, I was told by different peoples that the whole political system we have today, less Norman Saxon, linguistically Phoenician octagon octopus, Swiss Sumerian city of German/Austrian goes back to Tare County Meath, the seat of the High Kings of Ireland. I came to find out that the full political system worldwide was originally based on a Celtic world with the worldwide language being Gaelic and its mother tongue Sanskrit. 80% of Gaelic is Sanskrit. Phoenician/Sumerian/Hebrew is completely different from Gaelic, Sanskrit. They do not fit together. The papacy has consistently attempted to control royal interfamily marriage as they are bogusly, God's representatives. Interesting that the archangels are from the Babylonian tree of life. Vatican has one translation as snake magicians. Babylonian whores? Age 25, past life regression, may demand and received the metaphysical white cube of the perfect man by my ultimatum, either that or demanded my own death. Obviously, it was granted. I do not play games. Found the book Mathematics of the Cosmic Mind by H. L. Plummer 1978 Theosophical Publishing at the Theosophical Society, Boston which validated the existence of the white cube based on ancient Hindu knowledge of man in this universe. I had found documentation of an ancient tradition with over 1 billion potential advocates. This was amazing. At least some of these people were aware of the possibility of my experience. There were history and writings. I was not alone. I later found out that Allah, per the Quran, is Lord of the star system Sirius, which means that we are in a local interstellar war, if not intergalactic. The blacks appear to be mercs and a conquered people, the slave people of Nibiru. Then I found the meaning of the perfect man and the cubes, both white and black. It is not about relationships although that may come with it. Each entails advanced knowledge of the universe. In this regard, I once bought a book on Sufi literature, poetry with an essay on the perfect man. Said perfect man was compared to being the Wizard of Oz, as the man behind the curtain knowing where all the switches and levers were and therefore knowing how everything worked. It is like you have a task and the right whatever shows up. You do not necessarily get what you want when you want it, rather when source thinks you need it for the master plan, on his/her time. That is just the personal side of how it works. The more fascinating side was the cornerstone of Islam. That is the keeper of the cube is appointed by God, I call source, for his people, that he must lead. This does not make him infallible, as he must still temper his desires and temptations which may blacken and otherwise foul the cube, sickening the man, his lineage and his people. In the end, pathetic, he cares not for any but himself. It is broken and twisted and comes from darkness and evil. This is the authority and sadness of the Saudi king and why he feeds off of others with his people and they do no real work for themselves. They are the remnant of a defeated and genetically modified race used for cannon fodder to amuse an alien god that hates them, and they suck resources from those who pity them. I was once told by a Chinese spy that the Chinese had analyzed the religion of Islam and found it to be the only religion that actually made its people stupid and so forbade it in their country. They know and destroy the blacks everywhere they buy the land that never belonged to them in Africa. It is interesting to note that in ancient texts the original solar system only had 5 planets, which would take us out to Jupiter. However, now we have Saturn, Neptune and Uranus under the current definition. People speak of the black sun. Darkness worships this concept. This is a flotilla of outer planets as a separate privateer cannibal solar system. It is a privateer fleet raiding the original peoples of our solar system. It is they who killed the original nobles and placed their filth in charge without merit or authority. Further, they lost the respect of those who hired them by not succeeding immediately, and so they too are to be dispatched. October 2010, Sunspot 1112 to 1121, 2/3 rds in size of the face of Sun, pointed directly at Earth. I extrapolated interstellar and intergalactic economic and military prehistory of our planet. Made extraterrestrial military contact and made demand under ancient treaty. 3 ships were brought in operating off of Ganymede, and the energy therefrom was laid across multiple dimensions, preventing a coronal mass ejection, CME. Thereafter, said ships were refueled and left the solar system. Discovered, the stairway to heaven. Write it, read it and burn it. Be careful, evil acts bite back and can kill you without recourse, particularly if you have no authority. This is the curse of all Muslims. I discovered the universal court system through the Warner Brothers movie Jupiter Ascending. I framed my case for planet Earth against the invaders based on the Indian Hindu Vedic scriptures dealing with the off-world invaders in the Mahabharata and all others from the Milky Way cannibal privateer galaxy, their associates, minions and investors according to the royal court system ensconced in the Warner Brothers movie, Jupiter Ascending. I also discovered the people of the army who fought the off-worlders. I do not wish to name them. For now, they need to be protected. However, Gandhi did kill 200,000 of them and his family is a problem. Further, all the gold of an amazing temple to be named will be returned from the Indian government, which is an occupation force going back to Babylon. Wrote the case book for criminal prosecution of all worlds, their investors, their associates and their minions, demand for title and adjudication of planet Earth, the way out to save Earth with Addendum 1. Mid-2017 my agent served de Rothschild Switzerland with a copy of said book. Mid-2017 my agent served the prior retiring ex-Black Pope's lieutenant with a copy of said book as well. By means of some technology beyond my understanding, I was called into the Milky Way cannibal privateer galaxy court. I presented and proved my case per said case book, including demands which I adjudicated. At first they laughed, cajoled and snickered as to what I was going to do. Then their fear became pungent, then came desperation. They capitulated under the evidence. I sentenced their royal and common courts to death in 2-star systems. They offered 90% of their people. I said no. I asked for their defense. Generally, we have not moved on to the leadership until now. I waited better than 30 days for a response. There was none. I sent in the troops. 100 billion died in 2 solar systems. 5 million souls of the just died, each important in their own right to become an important part of the first wave of military forces and their technologies to arrive under the interlocking treaties from across the universe. I am grateful for their service. I ask Source to bless them for their sacrifice and give them the lives as they want as they wish for some time without harm to us, them or others. Strange, the head of the Washington Post speaks of conducting such spirit warfare. And killing her enemies, 3 to be exact. I am just a little upscale comparatively. Funny, the secret societies, seers and occultists believe it, validate and are afraid. In any event, I quickly realized that there was a problem. My losses were unacceptable if I had to take on a galaxy. I required 100% kill rate, no losses, incredible intelligence and the ability to test and reach through anybody's defenses at extremely long distances with no track back. I realized the answer. These idiots have been operating this planetary chop shop and body parts for life extension enterprises for billions of years. I personally believe this could have been going on for as long as 11 billion years. Everyone wanted a piece of them. Before I went into the Milky Way court I had started raising allies. The court had not realized how deep they were in. The problem became that I just wiped out the only direct knowledge base to the next level of the universal court system for further adjudication to consolidate my authority. Inu, and Enki, I love technology, the problem has been solved. Destruction is so much easier and sometimes pleasing than building, and faster too, don't you agree? Someone has a toy, we can wipe out everything you and your group of misfits have cobbled together in under 3 weeks with a loss of 100 souls. If we asset strip first it will cost more souls and materials, but we could still keep it down to 100 souls with serious destruction of enemy fleets and heavy weaponry first, and then hit the civilian populations if they are not compliant. I think the fleet would go for it. I am actually thinking galaxy-wide. I have to say I am impressed. This cross-pollination of different cultures' weapons is awesome. Everyone is impressed. You are the beneficiary. You have united everyone, everyone is happy. You and your group are an excellent enemy. You garner total agreement. You're going to pay everyone, even with your last drop of blood or soul energy. For some time I'd been trying to figure out the relationship between the divine right of kings when I found Prince Nicholas de Vere's Dragon Court and Dragon Court. Net. Said court had been chartered by the British throne as sovereign and tracked nobles worldwide with their entitlements. He had claimed primacy over the British and French thrones and coincidentally found himself dead. In the process he had stated the British and royal claims to the throne and nobility as follows. Descendant from the Anunnaki, Writ aliens, 450,000 years ago. Descendant from Egyptian queen a few thousand years ago and descendant from Genghis Khan. DragonCourt.net gave the answer I was looking for as to the plight of our world. Said court believes that the Anunnaki, specifically Enki, made man. Simply, creation gives ownership, which gives authority, which gives jurisdiction, which gives dominion, which gives the right to destroy that which one creates, in this case, man. As they descended from the Anunnaki geneticist Enki, who under the leadership of an Inu maliciously claimed he created man, and the same Enki was disturbed in his sleep by man. Accordingly the Dragon Court believe they are tasked to destroy man in this world. They believe that they have dominion, as such it is their legal, moral, and ethical right and duty to appease the god of their heritage. To this end they have enacted the current means of corporate governance and the Babylonian code in business and banking to take control of the whole world in order to bring about the destruction of man and deliver all the goodies, read earth, which Sumerians called Ki. Interesting, that Enki was the trickster god of the underworld. Apparently, the Dragon Court communicated this desire for the destruction of the economic system of the United States to Judge Powell of the Supreme Court through a rather famous memo, attached. Mr. Powell prior to his prestigious position was a broker on Wall Street and prevailed upon the heads of U.S. industry under secret society satanic covens by various names to enact said plan. It is reasonable to expect that destabilizing the world in this manner would upset the balance of power and lead to World War III. I have come to notice that there may be a variance emerging in the spelling of Anunnaki since I started writing this, a wonder. To the leadership, as so described in said casebook as referenced herein, you have no ownership, authority, jurisdiction or dominion, and neither does any government or organization operating on the face of this world. Without ownership, authority, jurisdiction and dominion as adjudicated by the original off-world courts for this world and sourced by contract under the original covenants, compacts, and treaties, said leadership can have no standing, and I do not consent. Your people came as creatures of the night to steal that which they did not own. If you had only taken what you needed that would have been acceptable. However, your crimes turned to avarice, then malice, found itself drowning in psychopathy and has never looked back. Enki and Inannayu, your family, peers, competitors, associates, other principals and all the categories, classes of codification of criminality in the casebook by which all plaintiffs must be measured and therefore must be held responsible individually and severally by conspiracy for all damages done thereby to include financial arrangements for mutual benefit by investors, minions, suppliers, and all associates, collaborators, and all other class of miscreants as described in the casebook, as criminally visited upon Earth, and all other worlds, planets and solar systems. This must include their heirs and assigns in accordance to benefits received. Subject to appeal to myself and or the good side of source. Activities of the class include such things as follows or equivalents as shutting down the firmament on any world, removing the golden necklace, a form of Dyson sphere protecting a solar system or its main planets and thus exposing them to all kinds of disastrous astrophysical events, manipulating worlds against their interests by bribing or killing kings or creating religions while pretending good and using trickery to end their civilizations by disease, false flag, war of any other means or manner of mayhem and heinous acts as a sampling of the scope and scale of said group's activities. Therefore, you and your extended criminal class must under this writ, the aforementioned class is under codification by the case book. Understand, this is not a request or a negotiation, this is a final court order to an action that is beyond appeal except as noted under new evidence. You already made it to the top. You are legally on my turf as thieves without ownership, authority, jurisdiction or dominion. Worse, you attempted genocide of all parties having righteous authority as the original kings under the divine right of kings of which I am the legal heir to said authority. That is a problem you cannot overcome. Accordingly, tax grievances are hereby filed for all your ill-gotten gains with compound interest per the case book, and audit will have to be done of your worlds for proper valuations. This will be brutal as charges for malfeasance, abuse of process, etc. will be required. I represent and I am the state at this time. All assets must be relinquished to the state under this writ of execution. Report for incarceration upon notice. You are hereby noticed. Lawyers will not do, you can no longer afford them. B. No bail. You are a flight risk. It is obvious that as you, Enki and the rest of the class will require special security arrangements that will also be at a cost to all members of said class. Costs to the state give the state the right of any multiplier the state may wish to attach as punitive damages. As it is not reasonable that on earth facilities are sufficient to provide reasonable security for members of some classes and the public. It must require outsourcing to include expert off-world consultants for transport, secure facilities and procedures to ensure everyone's safety. I will have final decision-making authority with cost being no object to ensure your comfort. When the proper arrangements have been made, you will report for incarceration. Failure to do so will entail the destruction of the miscreants' home worlds and others' holdings by some percentage at a time to be determined. So that means there has to be at least 2 areas. I personally believe that severe crippling is the best policy. As you and your minions now have no assets, English Prince Harry will have no royal wedding, as the state will not pay for it and you and they are not royal on this world or solar system. I am thinking about a small pocket universe in the middle of the great void with armed overview. Last I heard it is at least 100 plus light years across with no energy. I seem to recall some like 100 billion light years across, but I have to check it. There's no energy in it and basically if you don't have energy you don't get to live, so you have to have a star for them to sit around and hunker down and basically, they can go for pretty much forever and not get anywhere. Depends on the contract that you allow a criminal. The following is a very abbreviated list of things to be done on all impacted worlds with active populations, and apparent dead worlds must be brought back for others, and if any survivors are found, for those survivors alone or as they self-determine as capable, to include rehab as necessary, if possible. Cease and desist all criminal activities in the criminal codex above. Cease and desist all finances are to be turned over through and to include the Swiss Vatican Bank of Settlement. Cease and desist all captive souls are to be released back to the good side of source. This does not mean murder or diminishment of any kind. Cease and desist the idiots doing further destructive terraforming by volcanism, weather control, including tsunamis, temperature inversion, chemtrails, etc. From funds made available we must hire terraformers to undo the damage that these idiots have done. Build proper housing and transportation systems. Reseed the forests. Reopen the mines, Enki may have to learn to mine. Chemtrails destroys the soil. Stop same, heal the soil. A food generation system must be developed immediately to stop starvation and famine based on chemtrails. Off-world crop import as necessary as an interim measure. Refer to the case book for elucidation, including invasions. No one may go to war, do other further damage without authoritative consent under contract to source. Ref. Penalties in case book. Thank you source, the sun and my higher self and all who helped. I am grateful. So it must be. Under contract with Source, the sons, my and our higher selves on the good side of Source. I am grateful. Signed, under seal. R. Dunn, digital seal, squaring of circle. __12/25/2017. Richard Dunn, Writ. Today's date. One other man has the squaring of the circle, he no longer has permission to have it, if he uses it, it will kill him. This is not a game. I am a mage. He will beg to die in madness and it will not be given.